If you move the entire gauge, you turn it and the needle turns, that doesn't mean the needle moved. It means that the whole gauge moved. So that's where we are, Nvidia.
Most of you watching this, much like myself, are probably gaming and PC enthusiasts, and you know exactly what Steve was talking about there. And Nvidia has done this multiple times in the past, giving us some very meh series of gaming graphics cards. Well, I want to take a look and find out exactly how Nvidia became the dominant force in the marketplace today, and find out what, if anything, is going to change going forward. When you look at the prosumer and gaming market for home use and discrete GPUs, it's really Nvidia's world, and Intel and AMD are really just left fighting over the table scraps right now. If you really want to understand Nvidia's dominant place in the market today, you've got to go back in time a little bit and understand some of the decisions that led to where they are now, because they certainly didn't just spring out of nowhere. Just last year, Nvidia celebrated their 30th anniversary, so they're not really a very old company. Of course, they were founded by everybody's favorite leather jacket wearing CEO, Jensen, along with Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem. Although a lot of us get frustrated by Nvidia these days, especially when you discuss things like price to performance, I understand. It's really important when you look back on the decisions that were made in the late 90s and early 2000s as the footwork for where Nvidia is right now. And one of the things they did then was acquire the company Riva, which is one of the things that led them to doing more work with Microsoft. If you're old enough, and unfortunately I am, you may remember the 3DFX Voodoo graphics cards, which was one of the top graphics contenders at the time. Well, after 3DFX fell on hard times, Nvidia bought the remnants of the company and all the technology to go along with it in 2000. And that was one of the other pillars that really led to Nvidia doing more down the road. Something that I think a lot of people have forgotten over the last couple of decades is that Nvidia supplied the graphics for the Xbox. I think when you look at the acquisitions of Riva and 3DFX, bringing their technology and probably some of their people on board, those were two of the big pillars that really led to Nvidia being able to supply the graphics for the Xbox to Microsoft, and I think that was one of the big transactions that really put them on the map. Now, if you fast forward back to 2024, obviously Nvidia is one of the biggest tech giants out there in the world. To some of you, this might be new information, and others may have seen it along the way. But in my opinion, this is the reason why we get so frustrated with Nvidia, and they can kind of like toss around the market and do whatever they want when they release new graphics cards. Depending on what year you look at the graph here, Nvidia controls about 85% of the discrete GPU market. They are effectively a monopoly when it comes to pricing and selling GPUs in the PC space. Just to kind of back up what I'm saying here, this is from ftc.gov, and obviously I'm no lawyer, not giving any kind of legal advice here. But as you can see, courts generally don't find a monopoly if a certain company or a group of companies control less than 50% of the sales of a particular product or service. Obviously, we know 85%, which is right about where the discrete GPU market is for Nvidia, is well above 50%. Okay, Team Red guys, take it easy in the comments. I already know that you're out there, and we know that AMD has produced some really solid graphics cards over the last 2 generations. Although there was kind of a kerfuffle, if you will, when AMD launched the cards as far as the pricing went. Some of the pricing was obviously a little bit high for performance with AMD. They have to undercut Nvidia by a little bit, otherwise we'd all just buy Nvidia graphics cards probably. But they finally got that adjusted, and right now I think you see some really solid price to performance cards in the AMD camp, all the way from the 7700 XT all the way up to the 7900 XT. So you might be saying to yourself, hey, why isn't AMD a bigger competitor with AMD in the marketplace? Well, a couple of reasons. It takes internal resources to develop new hardware, and one of the things that's already being rumored, whatever they call the next generation of graphics cards after the 7000 series, is that AMD is not even going to really try to compete with Nvidia at the top of the stack. Now, that's just a rumor. You never know how those things change. Moore's Law has been saying that for quite a while now, but he's usually right about a lot of this stuff. And frankly, they really don't have anything this generation to compete with the 4090. I don't have any kind of insider information or have any rumors or anything like that. I'm just somebody that's been around the IT world for a number of years. And one of the things AMD has really focused on the last couple of years is going after the server CPU market. I think they smelled blood in the water with what Intel was offering. AMD has really stepped up their game with their Epic line of CPU servers. And when you're talking to somebody about buying a CPU server, it's not like an individual gamer that's buying one. You're talking to a decision maker at a company maybe buying hundreds or even thousands of your CPUs from you at one time. So I think that is one of the things that AMD has really focused on the last few years and put their resources behind. Everybody that follows the tech industry knows the last few years have been a little bit of a struggle, quite frankly, for Intel, both in the desktop world and certainly in the CPU server world. I actually want to go ahead and give Intel a few props here. They certainly could have used their engineering resources and the money that they deployed for their Intel Arc line of GPUs and go ahead and use that to help develop further new CPUs for both the server and the desktop world, but they didn't. They stuck to the course. Now, Intel's had a roadmap and it's been out in the public domain for quite a few years now. Are they going to stick to it? No, it doesn't look like they are at this point in time. Can they rebound, and can their next generation of GPUs be more meaningful and at least kind of get up into that mid-tier maybe next year when AMD and Nvidia really launch their mid-tier stuff? I don't know. You know, starting from scratch is a really big deal, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and resources and money. So we'll have to see where Intel is going forward. But this is just another reason why Nvidia dominates the market, is because Intel, as much engineering excellence as they have realized how hard it is to launch a series of GPUs and get them out there in the marketplace. So when I'm out in the world, one of the things that comes up all the time is people say, hey, this is important. Somebody should do something about it. Why can't we have more, better, different GPUs out there that are going to compete with Nvidia? One of the things that gets really complicated really fast when you think about any kind of product that has a semiconductor in it is a lot of companies don't make their own semiconductors. There's give or take about 1,400 fabs in the world that can actually produce a semiconductor at the moment. Keep in mind, all those different fabs are making completely different types of semiconductors. Some are going to go into our computers as our CPUs and our GPUs. We're going to obviously have them in our cell phones. They're going to be in data centers and security devices. And if you have a fancy toaster at home, you're even going to have a semiconductor in that. However, if you're a diehard gamer and tech nerd, you probably have realized over the years, you only hear a couple names come up like TSMC out of Taiwan, Intel, and AMD once upon a time as producers of semiconductors for their AMDs and GPUs that go into your PC. Only a handful of fabs in the world can produce these bleeding edge semiconductors that we're going to be using in today's GPUs. The question I've been asked a number of times, and it's a fair question, is why don't other tech giants like say Google or Apple get involved with this process and launch their own fabs? Well, the fab that Intel is building, actually here in Ohio, is going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 billion. Now, this is going to be their new mega site, and it's going to have multiple fab facilities there. But that's just for the building, the hardware, the specialized equipment that you're going to need to actually do the physical building of the semiconductors. On top of just an enormous bill to get your building just up and running there at the fab facility, you're going to need a whole suite of CPU architects and engineers to go ahead and come up with a program that you're actually going to manufacture to have your semiconductors, whether they're going to be GPUs or CPUs, to then go out into the marketplace. And remember, when you start talking about genuine CPU architects, you're talking about people that have either a master's degree or a PhD in electrical engineering or computer engineering or some kind of similar field. So these people are few and far between. You're going to have to pay them large salaries, and there's probably only a few thousand of them in the world that are really qualified to help you operate at a level of generating a brand new product. And all this brings us back to the now in full circle. Obviously, this week, Nvidia announced that they were going to launch the super cards. And while you are seeing some improvements in the actual hardware themselves, I think what's more important for most of us that are actually buying the cards is that the price is coming down on the 4080 Super, $200. And you're going to see some improvements in the hardware on the 4070 and 4070 Ti while holding the line on prices. So Nvidia is not totally oblivious to what's going on in the marketplace. They're probably hearing from their retailers and their add-in board partners that sales have not been as robust as they would prefer. So that is kind of a small win for us, a very small loss for Nvidia, because remember, they're making all that money on those AI GPUs right now also. Say what you will, some very shrewd decisions have gone in over the last 30 years in the way Nvidia has been constructed and in the amount of acquisitions they have made to put out products that obviously hold a large stake in the marketplace. Nvidia is a huge company with a large war chest and a prominent place in the market right now. other than say the FTC coming in and doing something there, or the EU over in Europe getting aggressive with Nvidia, I don't know how else their dominance would end in the immediate future. To me, the silver lining for all of this is at least Nvidia has continued to innovate. With things like RTX and DLSS, they have continued to move the needle some, or maybe rotate the entire gauge, as Steve suggested in the intro there. So let me know what your thoughts are down below. As always, they are very welcome. And until next time, GIF out.